Well, good morning. Through the Word, excuse me. Today is day 82 in our journey, and we are quickly coming to the end of the month of March, but we are delving deeply into the book of Joshua, well into that. And I love today's reading. There's so much we could talk about, so very much, but just a couple of things I want to just touch base on today. My first question that really came to me and hit home to me, and I share the same question to you today, is what kind of memorial have I built? What kind of memorial have you built? That place in your life where you have encountered God in a very special way, and you built either a literal memorial or an eternal memorial, a place where your children, those who encounter you, can look at it or look at you and say, what is so special about this? And you can go back and say, this is what God showed me. This is what God did for me. This is what God, or this is how God blessed me. This is how God took care of me. That's exactly what we see in today's reading. As the leaders come across and we have 12 men pick up the large stones, carry them to the point where they set up a marker and set up a memorial of the 12 stones. So at a point where their children, when they walked by and said, what does that represent? That they could tell of God's goodness, God's greatness, God's faithfulness, not only in the journey, but as they've crossed the Jordan and now they've come into the land that was promised so many years ago. I thought it was interesting. It said in today's reading, and the manna stopped. Once the people began eating from the abundance of the promised land, there was no more need for the manna, and the manna stopped, and it has not been seen since. God provided for their needs through the wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. 40 years. And now they've stepped into the promised land and they're enjoying what God had promised to them. And so, in a different way, God is now providing for their physical needs. I love the story, and it's not a new story to me, and probably not to you as well, but the story of the Israelites marching around Jericho. For the first 6 days, it was one time. They said nothing. They were told, do not shout, do not even talk, not a single word. So in silence, they marched around the city of Jericho. And it wasn't until the signal was given on the seventh day that even a sound was made. Can you imagine? I just had to try to picture this. Can you imagine what a processional led by priests, the Ark of God, and then an army of more than 600,000 fighting men look like? It wasn't just a short, here's a 15-minute jaunt around the city. Here were hundreds of thousands of men not saying a word, in silence. So all you hear is the blowing of the horns of the priest and the footsteps of the mighty army. The passage says that now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. But the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho. The battle had already been won, and all they had to do is on the seventh day march around the city 7 times. And again, with those numbers, it was a long day of marching. And so you wonder what the people in the city thought as they looked out their windows of their homes or over from the city top of the fences, or maybe through the gates, and just watched the men continue to go around and around and around the city. And when the final sound was made, the determining call was made, then the shout was given. by the men had to just increase in magnitude the fear of the people inside. But just remember, and I'm not going to talk about Rahab today, but remember, Rahab and her family were spared. They were the only ones within that little house that were spared. Everybody else was destroyed. My takeaway from today's was I must learn to speak when God directs me to speak. And I must learn to be quiet when God directs me to be quiet. However, when God directs me to speak, I must speak with confidence and authority. When God directs you to speak, you can speak with confidence and the authority of Almighty God. And when He directs you to be silent, be silent. Great words, great reading today. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're in the middle of another week. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow as we continue our journey through the Word.